Overall, I see this company to become a $1 billion company in the 5-year range if everything falls in line. It all comes down to regulation. We see this in the US, as David has just mentioned, that this is moving forward to be a more acceptable form of consuming, so to speak, in the future.
Probably the best rolling paper out there on the market, giving you complete control over your smoking experience, giving you a smoother hit for recreational and for medicinal. We want to reach the medical patients. We want to become a new category. That's the entire positioning of the company, being non-plant touching technology company, empowering cannabis touching companies, brands, co-packers, MSOs to really bring this new category in market.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Rabasha Family Podcast. Now, we have a very special roundtable here with two visionaries, and I'll start off with the CEO and co-founder of the product and what we're going to be talking about here today, Roca. David, welcome, and we're a pleasure to have you. And then we also have Sebastian. Now, Sebastian is a visionary who's been in the business and acceleration, monetization architects, working with founders and CEOs to diagnose where that revenue is leaking, redesign how their businesses capture value, and align brand narrative offers with pricing and with the market that they play at. And with David here, the visionary of Roca, which we are calling, and the technology as the Tesla of the medical cannabis industry, someone who's been passionate and obsessive with solving problems in this space. He is crazy, guys. He is someone who has seen the future, and he is living in that future in this present moment. So both of you guys, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Marketing is all about storytelling. Dad, when we first started this business, what did you say to me?
I said, yes, we do a podcast.
Why?
Because I want to tell our story.
Why?
Because I know the story builds a legacy.
Builds a legacy. And that is exactly what we do here at ETS Rabasha Media. We market your story on social media so you could build a legacy for those who come after you, to build your business and your personal brand.
Yeah, follow us on our platform. Go on our website, etsrabashamedia.com.
This is about legacy, and it is about showing up on social media every single day, because if you don't show up, your competition will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lovely being here. Thank you, Sujira.
No worries. So as we go through this roundtable, what we'll be doing is, David, of course, you being the visionary and having the passion to build this company with your co-founder, and Sebastian here, again, you as you partner with such visionaries, I wanted to go through such a powerful discussion here. So can we talk about Roca? Again, I have been quite a passionate and fan of the medical cannabis industry. We've been seeing it grow here in Australia, quite big over in America. Can you talk about your company and exactly what do you do?
Absolutely, yes. So I'd be amiss if I don't mention the ideator and the inventor of the technology, my co-founder, Ram Solel, who is a medical cannabis patient here in Israel for the past 15 years or so. The idea behind Roca was born from his personal need to have repeated treatment at the same quality, the exact same strain, the exact same potency, so he could have his medicine, basically. And back then in Israel, a lot of printing companies came out with the concept, I'm sure you guys heard about printed meats. So he said, if others can print meat, why can't I print cannabis? And that was basically the origin brainchild that brought Roca to be. Roca, in very layman's terms, I actually have a Roca unit here to show everyone. This is Roca. Basically, can you guys see this well? Yeah, okay, there we go. This is 100 milligrams of printed cannabis that the user just rolls into this right here, lights up and smokes, completely empty. There's no need to add any cannabis flower or bud. Basically, you're smoking the extract only. In Las Vegas, it was dubbed a paper-based vaporizer, and we received close to 2 million shekels or $500,000 in a non-dilutive government grant from the state of Israel to develop this new form factor for patients. So they basically get the same treatment, the same dosage, without any hassle of the dealing with grinding, rolling, all the things that have to do with the cannabis flower.
Wow. And just quickly, it's interesting how it started from, for example, the co-founder, being a user himself. So, having that issue and that problem. Sebastian, when you first met David and you first discovered this, I don't know if you have any experience within, medicinal cannabis or cannabis itself. What intrigued you about, David and the whole concept of Roca and what the company's doing in the medical cannabis industry?
Yeah, so obviously when you mentioned David first, so that's the main thing. I always look for working with founders who have a vision. I help anyone essentially, but if someone has a vision and that's exactly what Roca is doing for a category of one, then I'm immediately intrigued. It doesn't matter which industry it is. If someone has this big grand vision, I love helping. I love being there, and especially for something that can help many people out there. It's not just an industry where the benefits could be for some people, so to speak, or it's not just a luxury, or it's not defense tag where you would be like, is this really a thing that benefits everyone? Medical cannabis, depending on how your stance is on the drug itself, medically speaking, it is a huge help for so many people out there. And I've been through situations in my life as well where pain would have been much more manageable. Coming from a basketball playing perspective, would have been much better. And also seeing people around me suffering, cancer patients in family and friends, where medical cannabis would have been much better for them to deal with the whole stress and the pain of going through their procedures and going back to the hospitals. And seeing someone inventing something new in this sphere is extremely motivating, so to speak, to see just from the outside. And I wanted to come in and help as well.
So just quickly, Sebastian, there, when David spoke to you about Roca, what did you see that kind of opened your eyes? As I said, we've been talking about the Tesla of, the medical marijuana industry. What exactly did you see that said, wow, there's a lot of potential here to make this go quite big in the medical cannabis industry?
Absolutely. So the main thing is that we've been talking about this for in the terms of Tesla of cannabis and also Nespresso of cannabis. So when David and I met for the first time, it was the Nespresso, and we turned it into two separate things. So we have one that is consumer facing, so to speak, that is more the Nespresso type of thing. And if you have it more B2B facing, then it's more Tesla of cannabis, because they have invented their own machines to print that whole process. And there are essentially three different verticals that they can attack. And seeing this, that made me realize how much potential there is for a worldwide industry. And then also me coming from the business side, I see that they have like a 1.5-2 year moat against everybody else out there, and that is extremely motivating. It's amazing to see for someone building something like that. It's not just like the 100th or the 10,000th AI implementation agency. It's completely different. They have found a product that is so new and innovative out there that I really wanted to come in and help.
Okay.
Thank you, Sebastian. And so Jira, I just want to mention that Sebastian has been hugely proactive and really opening a lot of new avenues and thought paths for us here at Roca. So it's great to have him here. Thank you, Sebastian.
Powerful. So David, in simple terms, what does your technology allow doctors or producers to do what they couldn't do before, especially in this medicinal cannabis industry?
Absolutely. Great question. So this is called the doctor's paradox. And basically, when you eat or digest cannabis, the effects are postponed and vary substantially from person to person. In other words, Sebastian and I can both take a spoonful of cannabis oil or eat the same gummy, for instance, and we would have completely different experiences. Mine could last for 2 hours. Sebastian's could last for well over 4 hours. Mine could give me, a calming positive effect, and Sebastian could end up in the psychic ward for going crazy. When you eat or digest cannabis, the effects are much stronger, and like I said before, are not really, you can't really predict how it will affect each person. That's why 80% or so of physicians, when they prescribe a patient cannabis, the patient ends up smoking or inhaling the cannabis rather than digesting it. And this is called the doctor's paradox, because a doctor shouldn't give somebody to smoke. However, when you smoke, that is the fastest, easiest, most predictable bioindicator of the effects of cannabis, and they do not go over a certain amount of time, like when you digest them. So, having said that, we thought, how can we create a new form factor that sits into this and materially helps both the patient and the physician? So for the physician, for the first time, he can literally prescribe you your personalized medicine. In other words, you can print on a Roca card, he can prescribe your medicine, and in the dispensary, our machine will print out your prescription, specifically perhaps with your name, with a batch number, with the indication of the types or strains that are on it. We are able to brand it with soy-based ink, which is common in the industry. We are able to give a consumption ruler because we take out the biological element of the plant itself. You don't need bud, you don't need flower. This is like tomatoes. You can take 2 tomatoes from the same bush, right? And one tomato will be very sweet, one will be sour. Same with cannabis. Same grow, one can have a very high amount of THC, the other can be pretty low. But when you take it and you create a homogenic formula, an extract, right? This is what you usually consume with a vaporizer, and you print it out. I can give 100% indication of how much you've consumed as you're consuming it. In other words, when this is rolled up, you can literally see how much you've consumed. Stop, continue again later. So this gives physicians a tool that they didn't have before, where they can literally tweak what works for a specific patient. Let's say I have nausea. My physician can decide, okay, let's up the terpenes of limonene that would eliminate some of that nausea feeling. If I have sleep deprivation, he can up the prescription of the THC, for instance. So a lot of avenues that weren't there before, even with the most advanced vaporizers, are now a possibility. And on the most economic form factor there is, paper. And just from the patient standpoint, we're eliminating the inside, basically. So you're smoking something hollow, right? So you're smoking about 60-70% less material into your lung. You're just smoking the paper with the extract precision dosed on it. So you're removing a substantial amount of what you would have inhaled into your lungs, and thereby also reducing the burn temperature by hundreds of degrees. Those are the 2 main culprits in carcinogenics. So we're giving a healthier, more controlled alternative. Physicians can give you a personalized medicine for the first time.
Wow. It's quite revolutionary. Just to break it up in simple terms, and then before I go on to David and Sebastian. So, for example, with this, this Roca paper that you have, in a simple term, let's say on the B2C side for the consumer. So you're saying, for example, without needing the flower, could they now that extract, like let's say, for example, it's a strain. Let's say if I have a strain, a different strain, that strain can be put on the paper. And so without needing the bud, for example, here in Australia, I have a medicinal cannabis script. And then they say, look, we don't like you. They don't say we don't like you, but they say it's not really good to smoke it. The thing is to use a vaporizer, right? But if we have Roca now, that strain, maybe if it's like this company has this strain, Gorilla Glue, whatever other strains out there, you put it on the paper and then you smoke the paper without the bud.
You got it. Any strain, any extract, precision dosed. In fact, we can do 2 different strains on the same card.
Oh.
So you could get a head high, for instance, and then a body high. Or we can take care of your nausea and then your sleep deprivation. It's opening new avenues that weren't there before. This is what the company was formed on. If to explain in layman's terms the technology, these LED grooves here that you guys see, they're not just for show, right? When this is rolled up, this is what happens. And you get a capillary structure wherein the smoke has to traverse all of this. Basically, also check out the tip. It's a piece of glass, it's clogged. The air has to go through the peripheral. So we're engineering the smoke pathway. In other words, allowing for it to just be a vehicle for extract without the need to add burning material, be it cannabis flower or tobacco leaves or whatever patients usually smoke with. And the Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board, Nevada is one of the states where we started selling, actually dubbed this paper-based vaporizer for the Australian market that you mentioned, for instance.
Paper-based vaporizer. And Sebastian, for you as a marketing genius and a visionary in the space, how do you see this on the B2B and the B2C side? And where do you see in terms of revenue for the company? If I'm an investor, where do you see this company can now scale and go potentially one day for that huge exit in terms of, that revenue and generating? Because of course, this is all well and great, but where are the opportunities that you see on the B2B and the B2C side in a product like this? And where are those opportunities for revenue generation for Roca?
Absolutely. So for B2C, we are mostly talking about medical right now, but it obviously has some recreational aspects of it as well. So theoretically, if a company were to come in and wants to do B2C, they can decide, do we want to go B2C medical route or do we go a recreational route? In different countries, you have different regulations. Obviously, that will make certain paths a little bit trickier, so to speak. And then for B2B, you have the capacity of not just working with, let's say, pharmacies, but you can be a dispensary as well, but you can also buy the machines from David. So it's not just about, and that's the most important thing. So David's company is a technology company. It's not a cannabis company, that, so to speak. It's a technology company where they came up with the technology and then sell that proprietary technology to their clients. And what the clients then do is either B2C or B2B or even both. And what I love for this is you can have different avenues even in your own. Let's say you are a cannabis company. You can then open up all three verticals. And there's also a difference between not just doing on the B2C side, for example, it's not just the medical and the recreational side. You also have just the paper. So if you wanted to, you can also use the paper without the extract and just sell that use it for whatever you would like to use it in, let's say, nicotine as well, if that is something you would like to explore, or just CBD. If in your country THC doesn't really work for the regulations, but CBD might work, then that's an angle. To me, I believe in the next couple of years, a 1% cornering of the market is very easy to do, definitely. But I personally, in a $60 billion industry, I see a $1 billion company coming out of this. That's the main thing for why I really believe in this, because they have a moat of 2 years. They have a product with 3 different verticals, which has a medical aspect to it as well, which I really love from that side. I value that there's also the recreational side for other people who only were looking at that point, but I love the medical side as well. So that's why $1 billion company. That's what I see this. That's what I see this become.
Yeah, powerful. David, what do you say about that?
I mean, first of all, amen, and thank you, Sebastian. And like Sebastian said, all of the aspects that we developed originally for the medical market, they can bleed over into the recreational markets as well. And this is something that we've experienced ourselves coming into the US, having a 50,000 unit pilot in Nevada in 2025. In the US, each state is basically an autocracy. In other words, the United States is our main target market. And Nevada, for instance, you cannot grow cannabis there and sell it in New York, and vice versa, or California and Michigan. Same idea. And Sebastian laid this out quite elegantly, we are the infrastructure layer. Roca is not a cannabis company. We are a technology company that empowers cannabis companies. So in the States, the lines between medical and recreational and the recreational states are so blurry that the medical patients buy their cannabis at the same dispensaries the recreational patients buy their cannabis. And so all of the elements that we've created for the medical application, like the consumption ruler, batch number, the strain, everything that we can brand it, can also be used for recreational aspect. This is my business card that you can smoke if you want. So
Wow.
we can brand our units however we want. And then, like Sebastian said, the paper, just as paper itself, by creating this substrate that can be a vehicle for extract only, we've also created, I think, the best smoking rolling paper on the market today that gives you a substantially smoother hit when you put cannabis inside, and it just happens to be gorgeous. So the recreational markets as well, we're not going to say no if recreational users want to have our paper just as paper to roll their cannabis flower inside, regardless of it being a vehicle for infusion. So right now we're in business with several brands in the US, and we empower them. It's powered by Roca, with your brand, your logo, your face, whatever.
Wow, quite powerful. And for both of you guys, I'd like to ask these questions. Why would also universities or clinical researchers be interested in something like this?
Great question, Sebastian. Can I get that?
Sure, please.
So short answer is it's paper. It's hemp paper. It's cheap. It's economic, and it allows for rapid testing or rapid development. Like they wouldn't have to issue bottle cap, disposables or vaporizers for each patient, and then have different vaporizers, etc. They could literally print out 3 different Roca papers in the span of 1 minute for a patient with completely different percentages, dosages. We can dose anywhere between 5 milligrams and 300 milligrams. That's more for the recreational market in 1 Roca unit. So you could really get fast, or much faster than you could with any other form factor, indications, results, initial feedback from patients, from test subjects, and in the most economic way. So our machine can also go into a university, or can also go into a medical cannabis research facility for these purposes exactly, which is the origin and the arrow of the company.
And Sebastian, what are your thoughts on that?
That's one of the main things what I love about the company, that everything is so precision based. Me coming from Germany, that's something I love. I love to be as creative as possible, but I also love the structure, and I love that side of things. Me coming from this experience of not being able to get certain therapy methods, so to speak, to different people in my life, especially around cancer. And there were multiple people in family and friends where this would have been maybe not the perfect cure, but it would have absolutely helped them to manage the pain. If research would have been better around this, and the mindset around this, especially in different countries, for example, like Germany, it would have been much easier for them to get some form of treatment to help them to alleviate the pain. And especially when you offer something for universities where it's easier for them to do research, instead of just taking some flower and then hoping that the amount of THC or CBD or whatever else you want to test is in there, maybe potentially because someone told you that this type of flower might have this much of whatever ingredient you need, then this makes research extremely hard. One of my nieces works in or studies medical technology, for example, so this works really well. So I have this connection there as well, and that's what I love. That is not just a recreational company. No, it's something where this benefits pretty much everyone.
Wow. Powerful stuff. You know what? I'd also, just a small comment I'd add, being an athlete, Sebastian talked a little bit about basketball as well. In football, like, instead of taking painkillers and, all these players getting addicted to opioids, which are even worse for you. But then also sometimes as athletes, it's hard to smoke and get that in. So something like Roca now also makes so much sense because you're not infusing all the smoke in your lungs, but you're still getting that same effect and that THC to come in the body. So let me ask, and I'll actually start this with Sebastian and then we'll come back to David. What is the biggest threat to Roca? What's the biggest threat? What could take them out? What is that paranoia? What is the biggest threat to Roca?
Yes, and especially because you mentioned athletes before. Athletes have a really hard time to use all of the whole range of whatever is out there in terms of painkillers. For a lot of athletes, they use cannabis recreationally. That's one side, and I understand why leagues and why certain boards are against this. But from a medical perspective, these are extremely helpful. Maybe not for every patient, but for a lot of patients. And seeing that we need to change the mindset around this, that's the bridge. We need to change the mindset of regulators, because there is a difference between just getting high and just doing that and forgetting what to do with your life because you're just constantly getting high. Sure, that's certain types of people who do that. But the medical aspect is being forgotten around this because we have a small percentage where they over recreational, like overuse it recreationally. So because of these, the medical side is being forgotten over and over. And I see this in Germany. I see this, but also in the States. We just look at the biggest markets. I see that the regulators have the biggest issues, and they make the biggest problems, so to speak. We've seen that. I think that's something David also wants to mention, that Trump is going to move this to a different state, like a state of regulation, which is great. But I'll let David talk about this. But I see Germany, for example, they are swinging between different mindsets back and forth, and you don't really know how to navigate this as someone who wants to offer something that is helpful for patients. Yes, on the recreational side, but also for patients. If regulators come in and want to tighten everything up, that will, in my opinion, will create the biggest issue. Everything else is just market making, and is how to build your brand and how to go out there in different markets. You need to target different clients differently. For example, just rolling back a little bit, in Germany, for example, people, or in Europe, essentially, people like to roll their joints with nicotine in there. So with actual nicotine first, or tobacco first, and then they have an extra small, like a little layer of cannabis. So you smoke both, which is even worse from a health standpoint. I mean, obviously, smoking nothing is obviously the healthiest, but this is probably the worst thing you can do, because now you can get addicted to nicotine. I've seen this for a lot of people. They started having the nicotine side effects, which Roca does not offer. That's a good thing. And then in the States, you see the big blunts with lots of cannabis in there, but you still don't know how much you're consuming. So maybe you're over consuming. But anyway, so that's the brand building. That's how you have to teach consumers, but you also have to teach regulators on what a company like Roca offers and what the medical advantages will be.
Well said. If I need to add anything to what Sebastian laid out, like in terms of like the original question, what's the biggest risk, right? So there's also an educational risk, like or not, I don't know if a risk, but you need to educate the people. Okay, you can smoke paper without adding bud. How? Like it's a concept that's hard to grasp, like what if this would take more heavy lift? Like for me, when I heard printed cannabis, like I got it like immediately, my eyes lit up. I was like, okay, where do I sign up? But some people, it might be weird for them, like what, I just smoke, just inhale the extract. I don't need. So there's an educational barrier or mountain to go over as well. And the way that we mitigate that risk is, to touch upon what Sebastian mentioned on the nicotine, like people liking to smoke spliffs, for instance. So a lot of people that are used to putting tobacco in their joints or spliffs have tried the Roca for recreational purposes, being 100% natural hemp, right? And the grooves that were initially created for the medicinal aspect also give one of the best experiences in the recreational world. And a lot of people that are used to putting tobacco in their spliffs have come and said, I don't need to use tobacco anymore. The paper that you've designed gives me that same, sensation that I was looking for in the tobacco. So we find that even on the recreational side, the paper is doing some good as well. So yeah, to add to what Sebastian said, I think Sebastian gave a full holistic answer.
Powerful. David, who are your competitors?
Right now, there is no other company in the world that prints extract. We are the only company in the world that does this. In terms of competition or what's out there, right? So you have the pre-roll joint that's automated, that is basically made with cone filling or cone filling automation companies. You have a handful of these companies with all of whom we can work, right? As an additional layer, the highest growing CAGR in the cannabis market in the United States is infused pre-rolls, which is actually for the recreational market, because the market is going towards getting even higher on the recreational side in the US. And our technology allows for a seamless add-on to the existing pre-roll automation machines. So in short, we don't have any direct competitors. We're the only company that is printing extract. And we're now looking into different avenues where we can take the technology even further for things that we haven't even thought of, like taking it towards a non-smoking vehicle as well. Because of the precision dosing ability that we have, we had several pharmacologists come and suggest using the same technology for medicines, mixing different powders into the same form factor and the precision dosing, which is also unique. So the technology can go many different ways, actually, and is completely unique. We developed everything 100% in-house. We have 4 patents in different stages around the technology.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I call it Tesla, by the way, because Tesla has this huge moat and they were the first, and they're still the biggest electric cars manufacturer, and they came up with the first technology, and then now they came up with battery technology as well that is also superior to everything else. That's why I compared this. So not just because they are a machine manufacturer, and it's not just because David's company is a tech company, it's also because they have this mode and they are the first and the only ones to do this. That's what I love about this. That's why I like to compare it with Tesla on the tech side. So Nespresso for the precision dosing, but also the Tesla part, not just for tech, but also because they are the only ones to offer this. And they have a, let's say, 1.5 to 2 year mode, because everybody else who wants to try to do this, they have to do a lot of research, because what they have done right now is so innovative that nobody else can just come up with this in a matter of a couple of weeks. That's why I call it Tesla. Tesla, of course.
Yes, indeed.
Wow. David, I do know what you're talking about in terms of the infused pre-roll. When I did go to America, I had never heard of that thing before, and they'll say yes, it's a way for people to, exactly, people are looking for that more higher high. So it was interesting because I was going to ask Sebastian, what did he mean by a 2-year moat? But I think he just literally just answered that question there. Investors, how instrumental is that? And I'll start with you, David, and then on to Sebastian. How instrumental is that moat that you guys have in the industry? And how will you guys continue to stay ahead of the market? Because like I said, this is revolution. I still couldn't comprehend. I'm like, wait a minute. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean you can just smoke it with nothing in there? So what are you doing? You just, I couldn't comprehend it, but now obviously I do. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of how do you guys continue to stay ahead with this moat that Sebastian's talking about?
Absolutely. So, the proof is in the pudding. Like we're in conversation with all of the cone packing, cone filling automation companies, and they all want to play with us. And the reason is we have something that they don't have and that they probably cannot recreate, not just in terms of the 2-year moat. The wheelhouse that we've developed internally has machine engineering, has chemistry, the way that, okay, so one thing that we didn't really explain, and I'd love to just touch upon it, is that cannabis extract is very, very sticky. It's like maple syrup, for instance. So what I'm doing right now is kind of amazing. Like the ability that I have to take several of these, putting them together, separating them, touching, manipulating it. This has to do with our sealant layer that we've developed internally with a PhD doctor from the Weizmann Institute here in Israel. So there's so many elements to what we do. You have the paper that is unique. You have the machine that can infuse the paper with precision dosage, manipulate a viscous material like cannabis to the point where it can be precision dosed in the microns, right? And then on top of that, we have the laminate layer. All of these are IP protected under our 4 patents and would require not only time, but skills that are very unique. So like I said, proof is in the pudding. We're being sought after now by all of these automation companies and larger brands. And Sujira, to your point about the infused pre-roll that you tried in the United States, this is basically an infused cone for a user, for instance, to fill it up with bud. This is 200 milligrams, all right? Like we have something unique in the recreational market as well, very unique. Like I said, we're now going after the recreational, the medical, just the paper, as well as the infusion technology. So there's a lot of alleys that the company is now going after in order to mitigate risk or barriers of entry into the medical specifically. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
I don't want to yeah. Fantastic.
No, that's okay. I can see your passion coming across. And Sebastian, as a, let's say you're the chief marketing officer of this company, let's say today, right? How do you make this into a household name? How does Roca become the McDonald's? How does Roca become the Tesla? If I think of even in the marijuana industry, for example, I know cookies, right? I went to New York and I saw cookies that's by one of the guys, Burner. How does Roca become a household name? We did talk about becoming $1 billion company. So, whether that's on the obviously B2B, B2C, how does Roca, what steps, if you were the CMO right now, and then we say, okay, boom, Sebastian, we need to make Roca into the household name in the medicinal marijuana industry, the Tesla of this industry in terms of, the brand, what needs to happen?
Yeah. So what I find really interesting when we talk about a new product that is completely new on the market, even though the market itself is there, it always comes down to one, education, and also, and that's how consumers work, someone else believing in it, someone else that you trust. We have Snoop Dogg, for example, working with infused cannabis brands. I mean, obviously he's probably the biggest consumer out there anyway. So the main way for this would be to educate more, be out there constantly on socials, just educate, be where your consumers are, but also work with, because that's the difference between, do we target B2C or B2C? Obviously, B2C is more on the social side or social media side, whereas the B2B would be having direct conversations with universities, maybe even large university conglomerates. There are universities that are just in Germany, for example, they are just in one place, and that's one university, whereas other universities in other countries, they spread out worldwide, for example. So you would be able to help research in different facilities. So that's more of a personal conversation with them. On the B2C side, yes, we can still look at recreational and medical, but it's still a lot of education on social media, different formats. That's what a lot of companies forget, especially in the cannabis industry. They just show people smoking, basically, where I believe that is not the right approach for a new company like this, because you have to come in and show why this is different, and not just, hey, you get high from this, and that's not the. Yes, it is one of the experiences that you can have, but there's so much more to it. That's what I believe is more important. And then finding a spokesperson. Sorry, that's good. A spokesperson for this who comes in and helps with this as well. Someone like Snoop Dogg, who is in an industry where you can target your consumers as well with this. So your recreational consumers. I think that's one of the best ways. Roca is already working with influencers as well, so that's one thing. And then on top of this whole marketing vehicle, so to speak, there is, in my opinion, there might be a strong way to either work with recreational first and medical will come after, or medical first and recreational will come after. In this case, it's very hard to see. I like to compare this with Dr. Pepper, for example. So you always had a Coca-Cola and Pepsi worldwide. Different countries had only one brand mainly. So you go to one country and you want a Coke, we only have Pepsi. That's what we drink here. Then you go to another one, I want to have a Pepsi. No, we only have Coke here. That's quite normal. But now Dr. Pepper is in the US, it's the second biggest beverage, like cola beverage, so to speak, or cola adjacent beverage, but they're completely new. And that's similar to what David is doing. Everybody else is just doing cola, so to speak. And now David is coming in as Dr. Pepper, as something completely new with a new experience. You as the consumer also have to understand that this is different. You don't have to. There is a method. If you are a recreational consumer, there are songs around rolling the blunt and what you do to prepare, like all of this. This will be gone with this product. You have to be honest about this, and you have to be, as a consumer, you have to be clear that you're losing this whole thing of preparing and doing all of this. That is gone, like, mostly. But theoretically, you can still use it. You can still put bud in there if you want to. But it's a different experience from the one angle, but it's a better experience on the other angle, and that's the main thing. For a lot of people, they come in and they just buy weed from someone, and then they expect to have the same experience as they had a week before or the day before. And with this one, you will have a consistent experience all the time. And also you can get this at dispensaries, like let's say pharmacies, for example, where you can trust that there's someone using the right ingredient, because David is also preparing the machines in a way that they can also work with the right ingredient. So you know what you're consuming, and it's not just some back alley transaction somewhere. If that's what you want, if that's what you need, then this company is not for you. That's the experience that we need to get across to consumers. And the moment they are experienced enough to understand this, that's when the company will take off. So with an investor, obviously, and now to tie the loop to the investing, with an investor, this will go much, much faster, because then you can get some spokesperson on board, maybe not Snoop Dogg, but something in that range. Or I'm usually a fan of not working with one person. I'm a fan of working with 10 or 20 different people that all have their different target groups. But that will get much easier with the more education there is, and the more we work with different people.
Well said. If I can just add a little bit. So what Sebastian's saying is correct. Like, what we're essentially doing is taking the process of making a salad, buying the bud, grinding the bud, putting the bud in the thing, rolling the tip, putting the tip in, rolling it, licking it, into astronaut food. Roll it, lick it, light it. Like we're taking that process into this, because it's so radical, because it's such a big change, we're also going recreational, right? And there, we're not changing the ritual. You're still grinding, you're still adding your bud, and the branding that we have on our packages is built to burn right? Because what Roca does for the recreational market is it eliminates canoeing, right? These grooves aren't just for show. So when you add flour or bud into this for recreational purposes, right? And this is something that we found out with the penetration to the American market, where people initially put bud in when they weren't supposed to, right? But if you can't beat them, join them, right? And they come up to me and they say, it doesn't run, it doesn't canoe, And for those very expensive infused pre-rolls that they're selling in the States, this paper is quite let's call it an extension. It makes the experience so much more controlled, and ensures that you don't buy a $50 joint or $40 infused joint and it runs and burns crooked in the beginning. So on top of taking salad and making it into astronaut food, we're also making the best salad, if that makes sense.
Can you explain canoeing? Because I think maybe some people might not know the word.
So canoeing means I'm a recreational smoker now, okay? So I'm smoking my joint, everything's lovely. Suddenly it takes an angle, like it burns like this, okay, or like that. And I end up with half a joint that's, I cannot smoke it now because there's a hole here and all this part is still a part of my joint. So I end up throwing away a huge amount of the flour that I would have consumed had it not canoed, had it not cut off like that. So this paper has self-correcting attributes. The geometry corrects itself as you're smoking. On top of giving a slow burn, even when it's open like this. Originally, again, it was planned to be closed, hollow like this, and for the smoke to go through the capillary structure here. This is, by the way, one with 200 milligrams on it. So this is less medicinal, more recreational, again, but we can go anywhere from 5 milligrams to 300. And the sweet spot so far we find is around 50 to 100 milligrams.
I mean, for people who are watching this even on the B2B side, I think they're quite intrigued into this type of technology. And I'll even just say, in terms of just the concept, even just explaining it to people, it just makes so much sense. And that's what's going to lead me to my next question. Because even when I think about it, like, I value my time so much, and I value time incredibly well. And the time I always hated, the weed, and you gotta scroll up the weed, and then you gotta crunch it. That's why, for example, edibles were very good. So here in Australia, we have oils, where you just put the oil on the tongue. It's a bit easier because I got to go about my day. I'm very busy, so I don't have time to be rolling up the weed. It takes quite a lot of time. So I think that's why it's also a game changer. How would you say, and David as the CEO, and then again Sebastian as, for example, as a CMO in this instance, how do you go about educating? How do you go about educating people about this? Because also there's sometimes a little bit on social media. I think they've relaxed a little bit, but in terms of the regulations, a little bit on social media, right? I don't think you can run Facebook ads, for example, where you can really show weed like that. I think there's a lot of kind of rules around it because in some places it's still not legal. So how would you guys would say is the education? Because it is a big fundamental of what you guys talked about is going to be huge. Okay, even if we're using influencers, fantastic. But what would be some ways that you guys would educate consumers on the B2B and the B2B side about this? Because that's going to be instrumental in the scale of where Roca goes.
Absolutely. Sebastian, can I take this one?
Yes, of course.
So Sajira, basically Roca is a bunch of building blocks, right? We have the paper, we have the infusion, we have the sealant. Each one of these on its own has its value, right? And it all starts with the paper, right? And the paper is a common denominator. The paper is the basis for the infusion, and the paper is also relevant regardless of the infusion for the recreational crowd, right? So what we focus on social media is specifically, like putting famous brands, I won't name this brand for instance, but like famous brands, influencers' faces on it. We're using soy-based ink, which is common in the industry. What we've done that's unique to us is take soy-based ink from stamping, technology that allows very high MOQs and one of one to print jet technology. So basically, on this call, I could print 20 different images on Roca papers at very low MOQs, right? At very low cost and speed, high speed. So it allows for us to do this guerrilla marketing or rapid marketing capability where we can work with a lot of different influencers and work with a lot of brands. We basically empower the brands, and what we can show, paper is completely legal. So we can focus on the paper, and then once the person sees, oh, what's this cool honeycomb, shape? What's this paper? I've never seen anything like that, regardless of the branding, then we say, by the way, check out our website. We can also print THC on them. So that's how we build it into it. We don't start off with saying, hey, you don't need bud, blah, 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 blah. Hey, it's your face, by the way.
Sebastian?
I'm very big on stories always for anything that needs to be marketed, so to speak, marketed. I look at a lot of different companies out there, and they they only, I don't know how to say this. There's no emotion around what they do. There's no me seeing myself in these shoes. For example, I love to build stories with all of my clients and projects where we look at a holistic A to Z experience, or A to Z, depending on from where you're listening, experience of one single target audience. For example, if we go to the restaurant industry and you wanted to do some marketing there, it's not just showing a picture of the food. Doesn't really make sense to me. This is, for example, me living in Dubai most of the time, where all of the social media channels are just full of a picture of either it's nice looking food, nice looking drink. Yes, looks awesome. And then maybe a picture of a girl holding these fountain silver thingies. But that's it. So they all look the same. You look at the cannabis industry and it's pretty much the same thing. Everyone just shows someone getting high or shows their product with a picture. For me personally, especially here in this industry, you can also build a full story for every target avatar. You can have at least 10 different stories, and each story can then be dissected into different touch points. So, for example, you look at if we go for the medical side, if we look at a cancer patient, for example, it's not just showing someone, not just a picture of someone smoking or whatever you want to show, right? It's just usually just pictures. For me, what I would do is you come in with a full video idea of interview with the person, interview why they're doing it, interview similar to this podcast. We will look at every single thing that this person thinks about, then every single thing that the company is thinking about for that person, then the different processes of that person, different stages that they're going through while consuming, for example. That's what I would build with essentially any brand, but most brands are not doing it. Same here. That's what I believe would work best, to really show a full story from the beginning to the end, from A to Z, of how this person feels when using the product. That's what I believe. And then next audience, for example, could be recreational side. Next audience could be a researcher in a university. How are they using this whole thing? And that's 50 videos just from one person, for example. And that's how we can, I believe, this will make sense.
Wow, powerful. I think the storytelling, like you said, is incredibly powerful, and then I see that way. As we start to round off this conversation, if a medical cannabis company is watching this, what would the ideal partnership with Roca look like? And like I said, for me personally, I just see so many avenues that we've seen here on the B2B, B2C. So yeah, what would a perfect partnership look like? And also even for a strategic investor, do you guys also do exclusive, for example, if they are a strategic investor, exclusive rights to them? So for example, in Australia, like I say, I've been telling, and I'll be speaking with a lot of medicinal marijuana companies here in Australia. I'm saying, hey guys, this country is very slow. So whoever gets on this first, you're going to be ahead. Do you, for example, give exclusive rights to one medicinal marijuana company? For example, they are a strategic investor. What does that look like on that side? Who would be that ideal? And then what does that look like on the strategic investor side?
Great question. And absolutely, Australia is not, our focus market, although I'd love to have one of our machines there and have operations in Australia, like with MedCan, for instance. But if Curaleaf, Euphoria, Organigram, or a Canopy Growth is watching this podcast, of course, that's the premise of the company. The concept is to bring the form factor that we've created to the widest audience. And to do that on the medical side of things requires heavy lifting that these public companies can assist with, not only with capital into the company to receive exclusivity for a certain territory for a certain amount of time, etc. These are commercial terms, but to really bring what we've created to a wide audience, right? And to use the state health systems that are in that state. The premise of Roca, and we touched on this a few times during the call, is to be the infrastructure. We created this new form factor that's comprised of in layman's terms, the magic paper, right? And an infusion system that allows to infuse these papers so that you can, but you don't have to add flour to it. And by removing the flour from the equation, you basically ensure precision, dosage, repeated experience, repeated quality, traceability. We didn't say this yet, but on the US market, there's history in the making with moving cannabis from a Schedule 1 drug that's been the status since the 60s, basically, which is like heroin, Schedule 3 drug, which is like an over-the-counter drug, right? This will allow for, basically, it's the first sparrow for federalization. So making cannabis into a medication truly, right? And our technology offers true traceability, something that doesn't exist in the cannabis industry today, to the single unit, not only to the batch, but to the quite the single unit, right? With your name, your brand, your expiration date, the where it was manufactured, with a digital footprint. Everything is completely electronic with our machines. We give licenses. We have all of the data comprised in one place. So you can really turn this into, like we said in the beginning of the interview, a form factor and a system that allows physicians to give a personalized medical prescription rather than a license to a dangerous drug where it is today. That's exactly the schedule change that's going on in the US right now. So all these medicinal companies that are listening to Sajira's podcast, you should get on this quick, because we're moving.
Quick. My last question, 5 years from now, how do you see medicinal cannabis being delivered, and where does Roca fit into that future? Because there's still a stigma at the end of the day. There's still, maybe even in the business world, like, if I was to say, oh, just smoke the joint, people would look at me like I'm crazy. Yeah. And how does that fit into Roca? Where do you, again, for Sebastian and David, 5 years from now, how do you see this industry developing, and where do you see Roca going from 5 to then the 10-year vision?
So to me, overall, I see this company to become a $1 billion company in the 5-year range if everything falls in line. It all comes down to regulation. We see this in the US, as David has just mentioned, that this is moving forward to be a more acceptable form of consuming, so to speak, in the future. If this really goes through, we see that some countries in the EU, which obviously is the second biggest market in the world, we see some companies tightening up and other companies opening up more. I'm curious to see how this will go in Germany, which is probably the second biggest market after the US. Just looking at this from the economical standpoint, if everything falls in line and if those countries start believing in this to be a viable medical application to help cure pain, maybe there are even trials out there to see if marijuana, certain ingredients, be it THC, be it CBD, whatever else you need, if they might even have a curing factor for certain diseases, which they were not able to test really, because all of these flowers, you didn't really know what you're consuming, so it was hard to test. So now with this, especially with a product like or with a company like David's, now we see that there is an option to really move forward and to really test everything out on the medical side. Recreational is one thing, but I believe medical will really pull this forward. If things are being seen as more helpful than detrimental, and right now, that's why I believe in mindset so much. If this goes well enough, and people in the regulational departments, whatever you want to call this in different countries, the regulators, if they start believing in the possibilities, everything that is positive about this, then we will move forward. And I believe that this is a $1 billion company if these things fall in line. And I believe they will. Otherwise, I would not be so energetic about the company, about what they're doing. So that's why I believe 5 years down the line, big medical will get behind this, big pharma, and then also regulation, and that will turn this into $1 billion company. That's what I believe.
Perfect answer. Like, Sebastian knows the company inside and out, so I don't want to repeat what he said, but just to put it more crystal, I guess, both for the medical and the recreational. What Roca is a new category, and we've only just started. And so far in the US, we've been in Colorado, where we have full approvals, and we've been in Nevada, where we have full CCB, Cannabis Compliance Board. Again, each state is its own autocracy. Approvals, both for the paper, for the machine, and for the sealant layer that we've developed, all under our 4 IPs. If Roca, and this is the premise of the company, and just to crystallize what Sebastian said, is actually accepted as a new category in the $60 billion industry, then $1 billion is cheap, right? And if it doesn't, which is something that reality can happen, and we won't be able to educate the people, and they won't understand all of the benefits, etc. It's still, in the recreational side of things, probably the best rolling paper out there on the market, giving you complete control over your smoking experience, giving you a smoother hit for recreational and for medicinal. So we have a lot of these, I guess, fail safes. The recreational market in the US market of cannabis is around $60 billion. Just on the paper side of things, as a differentiated product, and again, the only company that can brand the products like this with soy-based ink, it's a huge opportunity. So we always focus on the lowest hanging fruit. You don't climb to the 6th floor with one step. So all of these, to your question before, Sujiro, the medical cannabis companies would allow us to really jump a few floors really quickly, and that's our goal. We want to reach the medical patients. We want to become a new category. That's the entire positioning of the company, being non-plant touching technology company, empowering cannabis touching companies, brands, co-packers, MSOs to really bring this new category into market.
Wow, I love it. Well, I believe in the vision quite a lot. And as I said, just the way explaining it, meeting you, David, as well, and just being a user myself, it just made sense. So even just going into product market fit without even trying it, it just makes total sense. And first it was shocking, and I can see why Sebastian came and said, Sujiro, you need to speak with this visionary, man. You got to speak to him. And then I said, let's do this amazing podcast. And here we are, in a matter of time. So I'm looking forward to, what's going to happen, even doing a roundtable. Maybe we will bring a CEO of a medicinal marijuana company. Maybe we do a 4-way podcast and we just have different discussions. Who knows where this could go and where Roca is going. So I believe in it. Thank you guys so much for coming on. For the people who enjoyed this, if you do want to get in touch, feel free to get in touch and we'll be able to introduce you to David and Sebastian. Any last words, Sebastian and David, before we get out of here?
Peace and love. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for everyone that watched us, and I hope you learned something new and saw something cool.
Exactly. Thank you so much. There's nothing more to add. That was perfect. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Peace.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, what's wrong? Bro, I'm stressed out. I'm running my business. I've got to serve my customers, but I need more customers coming in. I can't keep relying on word of mouth. Why don't you just use ETS Rabasha Media? Who? Well, with AI now, what they do is they go in, get your perfect clients, bring them in front of you. So all I got to do is run my business and he brings me opportunities. Think about it. You speak to 3,000 of your ideal customers, convert 1% of that 3,000, that's 30 people. 30 people in a room with you, can you convert that? Of course I'll close them. I'm good at what I do. I just don't have time to be going and looking for my perfect client. Focus on what you love doing and let them bring you customers. When you win, they win, commission, ching. Sujiro Rabasha, huh? Yeah, Sujiro Rabasha. Go and Google them, man. Come on, take it to the bank.
If you really enjoyed this video, make sure to click here, and I'm sure you're going to love that one.